Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into Two-Man Game here on ClaibsOnline.com. I'm Matthew Roccio. That's Bob Ramsey, and we're here to talk a little basketball specifically. It's playoff time in the association, so we're talking about some playoff basketball before we get into it. Rammer, how you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Looking forward to games tonight. I don't have to do double and triple duty. I can focus on NBA games. I'm really looking forward to it.
And let's dive right into some of the games we saw last night. We will also be diving into a little bit the Draymond Green news that came out as the games were being played last night, and also the games tonight. We have a three-peat coming up: Lakers, Grizzlies, Heat, Bucks, and Timberwolves, Nuggets. Obviously, some big injuries in those first two games. We'll get to that a little bit later here because, Rammer, you texted me last night during the late game, the Clippers and the Suns, that was finally got an enjoyable game. The reason why you phrased it that way was because the Celtics are just beating the tar out of the Hawks. No surprise to anybody. One of the most dominant teams that we saw this entire season. The only team that's top five in both offense and defense. And they just
also you've already got two stars hurt and maybe not playing in Morant and Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was really excited. And what I really liked was the stars were all performing, in particular early, until in the second quarter, Durant just said, okay, I'm going to go 15 feet out and I'm going to hit every shot.
Yeah, that was, he took over. You saw some late antics from Chris Paul where he was hitting some of those pick and roll jumpers that were pretty awesome. Devin Booker was absolutely incredible. 38
Amazing.
Points, 9 assists. And then anytime you have one of your 3-and-D guys step up in a playoff game, like Torrey Craig does, hitting 5 of 8 from deep, 17 points. He outscored DeAndre Ayton. That was absolutely huge for him. Anytime you get that kind of game, it changes what you can do when you get a guy like Torrey Craig. But yeah, just the star power of the Suns. That's really everything you expected from them. Chris Paul getting out there, 8 assists, 16 points, missed some shots, but he made some big ones down the road when they needed a couple points. DeAndre Ayton, not the best game from him, but still a double-double. And then, of course, Durant and Booker go crazy in the scoring. That's a textbook way you want to see this new-look Suns get going, against a pretty good team.
Here's a question I've got for you, and it may not be answerable. Westbrook didn't work with the Lakers, but he works pretty well with the Clippers. Now, they lost, so you say, well, what difference does it make because they still lost? I sort of get that logic, but isn't he – it's meshing better, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing with Russell Westbrook. And I sent out a tweet when the trade was made and he got cut and he got picked up by the Clippers. And essentially my point was, this could be great. If he could provide some defense from the wing. He could give him some bounce from the point guard spot. You put him in the dunker spot. You can make some things happen as a passer on a short roll. Maybe if he dedicates himself to being the screener instead of the guy getting the screen and then kind of attacking people in the short roll, that'd be great. And my comment was, that's what everyone's been saying over the last 3 teams he's been on. And the problem was there was no buy-in. And I think what we saw from Russell Westbrook from the get-go with the Clippers was buy-in. I think you see it 100% in his defense, especially when they get that Game 1 win over the Suns. He gets that big block and play against Devin Booker where he threw it off him out of bounds when he's going 3 of 19. I just don't think you saw that level of effort 100% of his game from Russell Westbrook. And again, you have the 3 of 19 games, and then you have the game last night where he's fairly efficient from the field. Hits 2 of the 4 3-pointers that he took, 2 of the 3 3-pointers that he took. So when he looks good, he really breaks well. But just overall effort and buy-in has been the crucial factor for him because that's not what we saw in LA. It isn't what we saw in Houston either, and that's why he wasn't good there.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that now, and that's why it's making the Clippers so much more dangerous than people expected without Paul George. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard is just there's sometimes you watch an athlete do something and you're just like, obviously they're incredible, but every once in a while there's a certain athlete and they do something you're just like, I am jealous of the fact that you as a human being can do that. And like there's certain ones like Dwight Freeney being able to spin move that fast at like 280 pounds is ridiculous and shouldn't be allowed. But one of them is, I wish I could just murder the back iron of a basketball hoop the way that Kawhi Leonard does. He shows no mercy on that thing. It's just right there, directly down every time. And when he gets in his groove, every single ball that he gets a clean shot off of, just back iron down. Just
you'll get a kick out of this. So I'm watching the game with my youngest son last night, and late in the game, they're kind of making an effort. Would they get it to 6 maybe? Anyway, whatever it was, 8. Anyway, Kawhi does a falling out of bounds on the end line jumper, and I go, "Oh, come on!" I said out loud, "Come on, need a better shot than that." And my son admonished me and said, "He makes those."
He does.
Yeah.
There was one in like this. I think it was late in the second quarter where he got fouled, like falling away at the elbow, and he almost made it. It's like I wouldn't even have been shocked at this point because he's in that groove. His leg feels good. He's playing great defense. He's controlling the tempo of the game completely. It's pretty incredible. By the way, Devin Booker wasn't the only guard who had a great night last night. I was unbelievably impressed with Darius Garland of the Cleveland Cavaliers to the point where I honestly think, and I thought this from the get-go with this series, I honestly think that the Knicks are hosed in this series. I think the Cavaliers are going to win the next 3 games to win this series. I really do. I mean, Darius Garland was a monster. He finished with 32 points on just 17 shots from the field. At one point, he had 32 points on 15 shots from the field, which is that is one of the most efficient scoring lines I've ever seen in a playoff game in my entire life. He's a monster. Mobley hasn't developed offensively, but you still have him and Allen, and you're a great defensive team. And then obviously Mitchell, what he's added, he's a great core player. I really do think the Cavaliers are going to turn it on. I know Stephen A. Smith said, quote unquote, the Cavaliers have no chance in Game 3. I'm going the completely other way. I don't think the Knicks have a chance.
Matt Rocc takes on Stephen A. Smith. Clash of the Titans.
I can yell just as good as he can. Thank you very much. Something else that came out yesterday was the suspension for Draymond Green. He's going to be out for Thursday's Game 3 matchup between the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, a huge matchup for the Warriors. They are down 2-0 for the first time ever in this run of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Some people coming out and not really liking the suspension. But honestly, when you look at, especially considering there's some people who are really irked by that there's so much of the suspension is coming from past dealings instead of what he did in the moment. But I think when you combine what he did, the way that he hyped up the crowd and taunted the crowd afterwards, and the fact that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the league, is in that crowd, I honestly was shocked when the first game tipped off and he hadn't been suspended yet. I mean, things the NBA, they've suspended a lot of big-time players in big-time games for a lot less than stomping on a guy. And whether or not, how much of this is connected also to the Kings coming out and putting Sabonis as questionable for Game 3 with a sternum contusion from the stomp. I wonder if that factors in as well a little bit. But what were your thoughts on the decision by the NBA to suspend Draymond Green?
Let's go start backwards.
All right.
I want to see the bruise. I don't believe it.
You're not the only one.
It's bullshit. Or show me a picture of the bruise, and I will apologize right here on Two Man Game. I'll apologize. Okay, that's one. 2, let's reverse it. If Sabonis threw a punch, would he be suspended a game? Usually, you don't think throwing a punch?
If you just throw like one punch, I don't know if you're going to get suspended for a game. I don't know. I'm trying to think about that. Well, the problem is the NBA is always like that. Like we're getting separated, and as we're getting separated, I throw one like that. It never.
All right, wait. Let's say he lands a punch.
Yeah, he probably
because the stomp landed.
Yeah, you suspend him for a game.
So that's where I think there's some balance there for people who didn't think he should be suspended. The other thing, when you talk about if you're arrested and go to trial, charged with robbing a bank, Is it reasonable in the sentencing portion of the trial for them to mention the other 6 banks you robbed? Yes or no? I don't want to put words into it. You may say no, that it's not right. What do you think?
No, I think that factors into it. I think you have to take into account what he's done previously because, I mean, why else do you suspend people for things you deem egregious other than to say you have to stop doing this, and if they're not going to listen to the punishment, then you have to escalate the punishment. Therefore, and that means taking into account what they've done. So maybe you don't escalate the punishment, you just continue the punishment at maybe a higher rate, and things like that. Kind of what the NBA did to Rasheed Wallace, although that was taken to a ridiculous extreme, and he never did these kind of things. He would just jaw at the refs a little bit. This, when you take it to this level, it's dumb. And again, this is a guy who, take it away from the actual way you have to legislate it, which is just a kick in an NBA game. Bring it to the fan and analyst side, which is he's doing this again when they're down 2-0 in a first round. And it's doing it in game 4 of a final where that you eventually lose because arguably you're not there. And to not learn your lesson and 2 years later put your team in jeopardy in the first round by letting it happen late in game 2 when you're down already, you got to learn your lesson, my man.
Well, more than that, for the faction who defend Green and don't believe he should be suspended, but because they're saying it was calculated, it's WWE stuff. Well, that is so selfish and so not team oriented. If it's planned, that's horrific when it comes to team play. But I think he is a team guy. I don't think he did plan it out. And that's why I think his anger management needed this. That he's a team guy, and if he took the time to think it through, he wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Because he is an ultimate team guy. I believe that.
I think that's fair. It just, you got to learn how to control your thoughts then, because you've too many times hurt your team more than yourself by making these mistakes without thinking.
What happens is, and I may or may not have personal experience, when you lose your temper in a situation like that, you take one step forward, you get pushed back, so you push harder, you get a little more pushback, you push harder, and at that point, you've lost control, and emotionally, you can't reel it back in.
Yeah.
And that's called anger management issues. When it goes so far, you can't reel it back. And I think it's real problem because he's a very smart guy. He's not a dummy. He's a smart guy, but I think there's an emotional thing there when he loses his temper. And by the way, I would have lost my temper too.
Yeah, the guy's pulling on your leg like that. Sabonis can't be doing that stuff. That's the other side.
You either go really soft and cry to the official. I don't think you stop him. I think you pretend to fall on him, and you fall on him really hard.
Yeah.
That would have been the smart. Oh, and then you fall, and maybe your elbow hits him in the throat, something like that. That would be smart and calculating.
There you go. I like that. Speaking of smart and calculating, because while Draymond Green obviously costing his team off the court, I do not think he's the problem on the court. In fact, watching that second game, I thought it was noticeable how they were attacking Kevon Looney in the pick and roll. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
The Kings really don't run a lot of pick and roll. They're a movement offense like the Nuggets, like the Warriors. And they ran a lot of pick and roll, and they really took advantage of Kevon Looney in the pick and roll. He would have to drop, and then he would either give up an easy floater to De'Aaron Fox or a good look to Domantas Sabonis, especially in Game 2. But then I came across this incredible thread on Twitter by a user called NBA Einstein, and this was fascinating. This guy broke it down in a way I absolutely love, because he not only did he touch on how they attacked him in the pick and roll, but man, he got into how Mike Brown was playing a chess match with Steve Kerr. I loved this so much. He pointed out that the Kings, in addition to not doing a lot of pick and roll, the Kings also do not offensive rebound a lot. They just bust it back in transition, you don't beat them that way. They
Right.
do not throw extra bodies. So what Mike Brown started doing in that game was saying, all right, I'm murdering you with Kevon Looney in the pick and roll. So if you try to go small, watch what I'm about to do. And all of a sudden, 3 Kings started crashing offensive rebound after offensive rebound, and they started winning the offensive rebound game and started getting some big ones, including guys like Malik Monk, guards getting big rebounds. And so I was fascinated by this breakdown, and it undoubtedly completely changed how I'm going to watch Game 3 of this series, even without Draymond Green, because if a Jonathan Kuminga, a smaller, agile, but still, good shot blocking player, gets more minutes because Draymond Green is out, he could be a player that could come in later in the series if he shows well and could maybe change this equation in the Warriors' favor, or maybe at least neutralize clearly an advantage that Mike Brown has found in Steve Kerr's team. But going forward, the Kevon Looney and how the Kings take advantage of him and how the Warriors try to hide him, that's going to be fascinating going forward.
Or Kuminga's a non-factor and they steamroll the Warriors.
That, I right now would give that about a 70-30 in your favor. Because it's hard when you struggle to be more than what Kuminga has, which is a 20-point player, 9 and 5 in his 2 years in the NBA. It's tough to come into a series where a team's killing your back line or front line, I should say, and all of a sudden completely change it. But maybe he's able to do it. But so maybe there's some kind of big benefit to Draymond being out as they figure out what the secret key is to breaking this. But I just thought that was a great breakdown that went with exactly what I was seeing in the game, first of all, and then built on it so well. So keep your eye out. Game 3 of that series is going to be absolutely fascinating. We do have some pretty sweet Game 2s coming up tonight, depending on how the injuries fall, because both Ja Morant and Giannis, it looks like, are going to be game-time decisions. They are both listed as questionable. Ja Morant has officially or has been referred to as game-time decision by multiple outlets throughout the day. Giannis was upgraded from doubtful to questionable about 3 or 4 hours ago, depending on which publication you're watching. So still up in the air. It looks like I think Ja's probably going to play in this game with the Lakers leading 1-0. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucks hold Giannis back for one more game, try to lean on some of their veteran players, try to maybe get them through Game 2. But either way, these first 2 games tonight are going to be dictated by whether or not these guys play.
Well, I think Morant plays. I agree with you. And I think Giannis, if he can go at all, he'll demand a play. Yeah. Now, he may be compromised. In fact, likely would be compromised. But 80% of him is better than anything else you got.
You're not wrong, and it's going to be fascinating again to see how the Grizzlies handle just not having any size beyond Jaren Jackson Jr., by the way, who's just named the second youngest defensive player of the year in NBA history.
Well, I just don't think he can guard Davis by himself, for 40 minutes or however much he plays.
Now without getting 6 fouls.
Right.
There's just no way.
He's really good, but that's not – he shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, more so than a guy like Kuminga, but then you just have to look at the Grizzlies roster and wonder, can these other guys now without Steven Adams, without Brandon Clark, can Xavier Tillman step up, give you 20 solid minutes? Can Santi Aldama give you 20 solid minutes against one of the best players, when he's out, not the whole time he's going to be out there, but in spurts when he's out there. And that's when the Lakers were able to, expand their lead to 6, 7, 8 at times, and the Grizzlies would make it close when Jaren Jackson would come in the game, and then obviously the injury happens and it completely gets out of hand. And that's kind of why, if Ja can play and if he can shoot the ball, then it all comes down again, right down to the front court battle and how many minutes can Jaren Jackson Jr. play. How well does he play against Anthony Davis? Again, I think he can win that matchup one-on-one. But again, when you look at the minutes and not having a Steven Adams as a backup, it's going to be really tricky to keep that one-on-one going for 36 minutes.
And I think they're going to need something special, like Kennard hitting 5 threes.
Yep. Yeah, like you just said, Torrey Craig, you saw it last night with the Suns. You need that player to step up and hit some big shots. And maybe especially Ja Morant. not in a shooting mood, passing the ball, drive and kick. Find your shooters, knock them down. And, maybe Dylan Brooks, get a little generous today. Give 2 or 3 of those three-point attempts to your boy Luke, who's hitting like 50% of his open three-point shots this season. It's ridiculous. Yeah. The other game tonight is the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. I expect the Nuggets to just keep on beating up on the Timberwolves and roll through this series. A lot of people doubted the Nuggets, but again,
I don't.
It's hard to. It's two things. It's hard to evaluate a team when they haven't played with any real effort in a month and a half. And I can't fault an analyst or a fan who says, listen, if you go into the playoffs limping in like that, I don't know how you're even going to win one series. So I can understand those two thought processes, but at the same time, just watch what Jokic can do to an average NBA defense, and he turns it inside out.
I agree, 100%.
Well, those are our thoughts about the games going into tonight and some thoughts going forward. We'll be back soon to talk more about these NBA playoffs. Again, these injuries are going to be a big factor, and they could completely change these series by the next time we talk. Rammer, before we go, though, please tell our friends about Royal Banks of Missouri.
Royal Banks of Missouri, over 60 years in St. Louis and expanding in the last couple of years, but always keeping that hometown feel on the east side, St. Charles County. Northeast Missouri, each branch feels like your hometown bank. Royal Banks, where better service means better banking.
Thank you so much, Rammer. You have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the games tonight.
See you, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
At St. Louis Acura, we have over 130 new Acura models in stock or on the way in March. Like the 2023 Acura MDX, get $1,500 in loyalty cash when you buy, or you can lease the MDX starting at $599 a month. Earn $1,000 loyalty cash on the 2023 Integra, RDX, or TLX. Or you can save over $3,500 on our large selection of Acura courtesy vehicles. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.